We're talking about the sun in Ardra Nakshatra. Ardra is the abode of Shiva as Lord Rudra, the fierce god, the one of destruction and the flood and the transformation. So talking about the sun in Ardra Nakshatra. So of course, the sun is the energy of light, consciousness, the one without a second, which is that unified spirit that doesn't mean the one in me and the one in you and all of the separate ones. It's the one. There's only one of them, which is the non-localized oneness. For example, we look and there's one sun. There's one source of light. Even astrologically, there's only one source of light. And it's the thing that gives light to everything. Don't forget, everything else is just reflecting the sun's light. Okay? The moon, the other planets, they don't have their own light. They're reflecting the sun's light. So the sun is that power to illuminate, to purify, to reveal the truth. And so it's the truth itself. And within you, it's that truthful identity beyond your individual identity. You incarnate in this body-mind world of time based on your karma, and that creates a separate self, a unique self in this lifetime that's shown through the ascendant and then the astrology chart, all the different placements, all the different planets. But on a higher level, you are the supreme self, the unembodied, non-local self. And that's the self of the sun. So any sign that the sun is in, any nakshatra that the sun is in, shows a nature, a transcendent light, and a quality of transcendent light. So when the sun is in Ardra Nakshatra, it's literally in the abode of Shiva. Ardra is a representation of Rudra, and Rudra is the form of Shiva that is fierce, and transformative. Now it happens in the sign of Gemini. Of course, in Indian astrology, the nakshatras align the zodiac. The zodiac is pinned to nakshatras, which means 27 nakshatras and 12 signs are all pinned to the same place. So Ardra happens from 640 Gemini to 20 Gemini. So the sun in Ardra Nakshatra has the quality of Shiva energy, which is to transform, to change, and to defend the truth, righteous truth. So you want to understand that Ardra, and especially Shiva as Rudra, is that mighty destructive force and transformative destructive energy that transforms through destruction, and the energy of defending the righteous and what we know is right, which is not always what is easy or what is convenient. In many ways, it also is a intellectual or a conceptual righteousness. Again, it's in Gemini. And so we can tell the righteous and what's right by the things that are said and the details we see. That's right or that's not right. And Ardra is very motivated to defend what's right. It's motivated by dharma and to destroy what is not dharmic. And it's literally the power and the need to establish dharma. And when something is not dharmic, it can be this righteous anger to destroy situations, especially where Dharma is being violated. And there's a story of Rudra in the Vedas where Rudra was born by all of the powers and weapons of the other demigods. Gods like Indra, Agni, Vayu. These were gods that were related to elements. They were also, again, not transcendent deities like Shiva or Rudra. Rudra then became on the same level as like Brahma. And in fact, what happened is Brahma, as he was creating the universe, had to create beings to populate the universe, and to create beings of bodies, with bodies, you have to have an act of fornication of sorts. Everything was Brahma's child. So in order to create beings with bodies and karma, he would have to have some kind of fornication with a child, with his child. Now again, this is on a cosmic level, and it's how every creation tradition has some kind of, if not incestuous, nature of God with the mortals, but some version of how the one becomes many. How can the one, which there's only one, become many and create this multiplicity? At some point there's an act of creation or fornication that has to produce bodies, and it winds up being some intermingling of God with one of their daughters or something like that. So in the creation myth, one of the famous creation myths from the Vedas, this happens, and the other demigods recoil in horror at the act that's playing out in front of them, where Brahma turns himself into a deer and chases after his daughter Rohini. In the Mrigashira Nakshatra, there's a chase and a quest for beauty and the sort of gentle beauty, to want to create a life and a joyful life for everyone, from Rohini to Mrigashira, from Taurus to Gemini. But then the next nakshatra is Ardra, where he shoots the deer. Ardra is also the hunter. Rudra is the hunter. He has a bow and arrow. And he was conceived of to bring down Brahma, to in no small way actually bring God down himself. Even God himself, if he's violating Dharma, Rudra will shoot the arrow. Now again, it's a very subtle story, and every time I tell it, someone goes, "Oh, you got it all wrong." Da, da, da. It's a very complex story, and I don't have it wrong. There's a lot of metaphor in it, and of course, some of the metaphor relates around the fact that Brahma was misunderstood. It wasn't an act of lust; it was an act of creativity. But to the demigods and to the others, it was still a violation. And so this whole creation myth, which is related to Rudra, is a metaphor, again, for our lives, and also life on earth, as not some sort of mistake, but a drama, a play, a lila, as they call it in the Vaishnav tradition. Lord Krishna and his leelas with the gopis, his games that he plays. This is one of the biggest leelas. It's told in other texts in different ways, where you have similar stories of Ardra and Rudra and Shiva that is also related to Shiva's wife Sati, and a fire ceremony and her immolation in the fire, because Lord Brahma, again, instead of Brahma being someone who chases his daughter and then is shot by Rudra and by his arrow, it's a different story where Brahma, as Prajapati, his daughter marries Shiva, and because Shiva isn't proper and he's snakes around his neck and kind of an outsider, he's not celebrated, he's kind of mocked. And Brahma represents a sort of formal patron, a formal sort of deva-like propriety. And so he mocks Shiva at one of the yagyas, at one of the fire ceremonies, and his daughter, who is Shiva's wife, hears the mocking and becomes so distressed that she throws herself on the fire. And then Shiva finds out, Shiva as Rudra finds out and cries these oceans of tears, this flood of emotion, and he goes and like wreaks havoc and like kills all the gods that were at the yagya, that were at the fire ceremony. So these things, this section is a very rich section with a lot of rich metaphor. And the Ardra quality gives a lot of insight into the fierce nature of Shiva, who is, again, the one who is going to restore righteousness and dharma. Especially if people have planets in Ardra, they're very motivated to take up the battle if they see that the righteousness is not being honored. And so that fierce anger and frustration can be in Ardra Nakshatra. And when people have planets in Ardra, they have to be careful not to become overcome by those emotions, and instead of reacting emotionally, keeping their head cool, like Shiva in his highest, most developed state has the Ganga flowing out of his head. And you cool him down with, when you do Abhishekam on the Shiva lingam, you put water and yogurt and things to cool him down because he's hot. He's ready to do battle. So you got to cool him down, and that fire then becomes anchored in the heart and becomes compassionate. It becomes sensitive to the ignorance that would violate Dharma. Because any violation of Dharma is a tragedy. Now someone has to speak the truth. Ardra and Rudra is very much that kind of truth teller. And again, this is very much a part of Gemini. But ultimately, Dharma is taken care of by karma. People who are violating Dharma, they will incur the karma of that. That's how it works. Now, again, Ardra and Rudra energy is very important in showing the truth and showing up and saying, I need to make sure that the truth is spoken here. So if you have planets there, at least you can show up and speak the truth. Again, when the sun is there, when the sun is in Ardra, you'll see that, again, that energy in the mind to want to speak the truth and clarify the truth and show up in that Shiva nature it's like their soul resonates on that frequency. Like the soul nature that they have, that kind of transcendent soul nature, is very much aligned with finding the truth, speaking the truth, establishing Dharma, speaking out when they see that it's not being honored. And so when the sun goes through Ardra, it's very much a time of the truth being seen, the truth being spoken, the truth being fought for, trying to destroy what's not true. Again, in this world, it winds up being an iffy proposition, because what we think is true as an individual is being filtered through our emotions and our history and all kinds of things that aren't necessarily true. But we can know that there is a all-pervasive truth which is beyond this world. And many times when the sun is in Ardra, it's a great time to really connect with that abode of Shiva beyond this world. It's a very powerful energy, because the greatness of Shiva and Rudra as the fierce form is to not need to be comforted by the world, not need to just feel good and be emotional, and it's to exist as a figure that is more occupied and interested in transcendence, not connection necessarily. We spend so much of our energy on connection, especially with other people, and that Ardra nature, sun in Ardra, is really a time to dial in that transcendent truth. No matter how much you like the world, love the world, feel like you're part of the world, you're actually not. You're a transcendent being. And knowing yourself as a transcendent being, non-localized being, non-incarnated being, is the highest. It's the highest yoga, it's the highest calling. And really everything that looks higher, like, oh, one day I'll have this relationship or this thing or this job or this thing, it's really just the ego's attempt to basically say, one day I'm going to be bigger and transcendent of it all. It's the sun trying to be fully immersed in the light, expanding toward that pure light, without a shadow, without a second, without the variety. So the sun in Ardra, very powerful for being the truth, speaking the truth, not getting lost in the emotions and the anger and the fury of not seeing Dharma being established, however it is that you describe it. We usually get stuck in things like politics or this or that kind of thing. That's not Dharma in the highest sense. That's a shadow, worldly version of it. But we have to stick up for that too. But the thing about it is that we can speak the truth and speak it with a lot of passion, but not get trapped in the emotion of it, particularly with the sun. It's about purification. So sun in Ardra, a fantastic placement and a fantastic time to connect with the Shiva energy.